Hello and welcome to the Xenogenesis podcast. In this episode, episode 58, we're covering chapters 1 and 2 from part 2, Exile of Book 3 Imago of the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia E. Butler. My name is Richard Acton, and I'm joined, as always, in this dangerous rainforest by my co-host,
Michael Glinka. Hi, everyone. How are you doing, Richard?
Pretty good. I thought we might open up this episode with one of our little sort of content corner segments that we've done a couple of times before. We talked about things we've been reading and watching.
Sure.
So I pointed out before I was kind of exploring the world of anime.
Oh yes.
And a couple of things the dark side. Yes. A couple of things to add to my list of animes that I've been enjoying. Obviously, I think Dr. Stone is one that anyone who knows me would very likely have suggested to me. And that's spectacular. I love that. It's like yay science, I think is more or less the the punchline of that whole thing. I don't want to reveal anything about the premise, but it's
but it's really good. Honestly, I absolutely also recommend it for those who are interested in science, because I've read the manga, the whole manga, and obviously watched the anime. And I need to say, manga, I mean, the movie animation is amazing. Obviously, they really keep it to the manga, but I personally thought that the beginning of the manga is much more interesting than the later on stages, but because there's more focus on the very early stages of the science development, right? The materials and all those like stuff that you have to work on. Because the later on, obviously, it's like more modern stuff type of thing. But honestly, it's great. It's really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we talked about HPMOR being one of the kind of things that it inspired this podcast, and like there's a certain similarity in some dimensions to that story and Dr. Stone. It's slightly different. There's some different aspects, but some also similarities.
Absolutely.
The other anime is also somewhat similar in some ways. It's Ascendance of a Bookworm, which is kind of like I describe it as a bit like Dr. Stone, but with slightly less like high octane. You know, I freaking love science so much that I'm gonna flex my brain so hard my hat explodes. Right? It's a bit more. It's a bit more like chill.
To be honest, when you mentioned it to me the last time, I actually got and watched all the 3 seasons.
Already? It was like last week.
I've absolutely devoured it. I honestly thought it was going to go somewhere else. Then like the pacing is a bit different, obviously, and as you said, it's not as high octane as Dr. Stone. It's really interesting because it's more of less of all the like very important science, more of like this girl is fanatic of books, and just everything related to that is there, like the science behind. So it's really good.
Yeah, it's much more kind of like narrowly focused on I want books back in this universe rather than like science more generally. But there's kind of a lot of other stuff is entailed by the necessity, by the like mission of getting books back.
yes, and it's an interesting story because there's a lot of interestingly. There's a lot of character development of the side characters, and you really can enjoy. It's not like the typical isekai, so the reincarnated to another world type of thing. It's more of it's more realistic, I would say, in a lot of aspects. So
yeah, it's quite grounded, a little bit more slow paced, very wholesome. But I enjoyed that immensely. Yeah, it was kind of a delightful little anime. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I would also highly recommend watching it. On the other hand, if I may, I wanted to talk about a manga. Well, I've been reading recently, but it's not that new. It's actually from 1982. I'm talking about Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Obviously, there was a movie made about it, made on that manga in 1984. It was his first animated movie, and I cannot recommend enough that animation or the manga itself, actually, because I think the manga itself is even more beautiful and more detailed, obviously, than the movie. And if I may, because this is a story that it blew my mind, honestly, that the fact that because of Americans, we almost not got any of the Miyazaki movies at all in the Western world. And it is crazy, because Nausicaa is a beautiful story about, a world that survived an apocalyptic war, and the main character, the title character, Nausicaa, being a connection between the human and the world surrounding. So the very toxic world of like fungus and world. There's not really much of like plants anymore because of the apocalypse. And basically the whole manga and anime focus on like the anti-war and environmental themes, because Miyazaki based his story on the mercury poisoning of the wastewater that accumulated in the Minamata Bay in Kumamoto Prefecture in 1956. It was a really serious environmental disaster. It took, I think, if I remember correctly, 40 billion yen and several years to clear out the whole area of all those mercury compounds. It was really awful. Wow. And so that's the thing. So Miyazaki created the movie. It was quite widely successful in Japan, and then he thought that America, great friends of Japan, we will try to publish the movie there. And so he did contact some companies, and finally, specifically Manson International, specifically directed by Harvey Weinstein. Yes, the same one. Said, yeah, we will do it. And basically, because of him, we almost got no more movies from Miyazaki, because they edited the movie so much that they almost completely removed the main protagonist, Nausicaa, from it. It was released under the name called Warriors of the Wind, and it had the poster with characters that didn't even exist in the animation, and it flopped. It literally flopped in there. And when Miyazaki heard about it, he hated it so fucking much that he said, he promised that no more ever he will ever release any movie in the West if they're gonna edit it, literally never. And then Disney came.
As if Weinstein could be more of a dick.
I honestly, Disney at the time then came to Miyazaki and he was like, listen, we will release it. But because Disney at the time was still very PG-13, they didn't have those different studios working, it's still under Disney umbrella. So so Weinstein again said I can translate and publish it again. We'll cut those and Miyazaki, when he fucking heard that, he sent the Disney executives katana with a note saying no cuts. And he fucking won. They didn't edit anything. It was beautifully dubbed and basically released in America, and then it spread to Europe. But honestly, just by then Weinstein should have been in jail just because of that. And it would have probably saved a lot of people after that, for the next 40 years. I swear, I to this day, I when I read it, I'm like, how can you even do this? Honestly, it is crazy. They dumped it down in America. Honestly, they made it an action movie instead of a beautiful story about, the fact that the environment was completely destroyed and how we need to, and anti-war messages, and it blows my mind.
It is interesting how little Hollywood seems to think of the American public, right?
They're
always trying to dumb things down.
It really is crazy how belittling this behavior is towards American audience, right? Because you would think if it doesn't have explosion every fucking 2 seconds, it's it's not gonna be selling. It's really?
It's a lot of things where they try and do a weird American cultural translation almost, where they take TV shows made in other countries and they make an American version where they kind of sand off all of the stuff that they don't think the American audience is going to get. Which is, it just seems very strange to me. Things I think they tried and failed really hard to do an American version of the In-Betweeners.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it. I saw that I was like, American in between us, and I listen to like shortcuts. Like this is honestly
that would never work. Right?
Yeah.
You can't. That's just not. And even things like when they did the Harry Potter books, right? The Sorcerer's Stone rather than the Philosopher's Stone.
Like as a philosopher,
Seriously?
was a fucking difficult word to remember. Like honestly.
It's
No, but
nuts.
it's crazy that how the the American Hollywood just dumps down things. Like honestly, it's just I don't know. It just feels to me that like I cannot recommend enough reading or watching Nausicaa. Like it's just. I just love the drawings. It's really old style, obviously the hand drawn environments and everything, and they're just so beautiful. So I honestly, alongside Dr. Stone and Ascendant of the Bookworm, obviously Nausicaa won a lot of prizes, and so it's not the same level, but it's like those I would highly recommend.
Mm-hmm. Okay, while we were talking, I had a couple of other thoughts that I will just quickly slip in here. Following up on the like American cultural translation thing, there's one show, it's a really good show, but it has a very strange component to it that relates to that. So Sex Education, it's a Netflix show. It's very good, but there's this very strange aspect of it. It's set in, or it seems to be set in the UK, right? Everyone has British accents, they speak with like UK vernacular, but they attend a school which is like very clearly in the Wye Valley in Wales from the scenery.
Okay.
But the culture is like an American high school. It's a very strange like combination of things, because it's got like all these very like obviously British like cultural components to the way that they speak and other aspects of it, but then like the way that they behave and the drama of the interpersonal interactions and the way that they do things like sports and lockers and stuff is all very much like the
that's
American high school stereotype, like translated. And it was very kind of like a weird combination, because I think I could see it if you came from the American perspective, it might make sense to you because you have like all of the like high school cultural tropes like met, but you don't have any of the like British secondary school stuff as like cultural components. You just have the accents and like the vernacular, which is
really weird.
It's very strange, but despite that oddity, it's a good show.
I mean, honestly, that's just honestly, this is this whole like translation into American environment, and it just makes no sense. Like, and the thing, it shows often like when shows that are widely popular in made in foreign countries, they're popular in America, and then they try to make them and obviously flop because
I mean, I think maybe with this, they're trying to save on that problem, right? They want to make it accessible to both British and American audiences, and British audiences are familiar from American cultural exports with the American high school drama paradigm, so that's not like a foreign thing to them. But whereas the sort of jokes you get about like British secondary school culture, it probably wouldn't land so well with an American audience, like similarly to that whole thing with the attempting to do the in-betweeners translation. But that got me thinking in that direction. One final thing to mention is I recently read a book by Frank Herbert called Destination Void.
Okay.
Which is kind of an extended exploration on the topic of creating like a sentient artificial intelligence under conditions where it's very high stakes that you do create such a sentient artificial intelligence, without revealing too much detail about the plot. But it's a very interesting one. I don't know why I hadn't heard more about this before, and it has a very cool kind of like 1950s-ish era kind of computing aesthetic, like the ways that they interact with the computers and the sorts of computational hardware that they are making use of feel like they'd fit into that kind of era. But it's I found it a very interesting book.
I guess the Dune shadowed a lot of his work, so that's why unless you dig into it don't usually hear about it. Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, I guess let's finish the reading, watching Con, and then move on. So I wanted to say apologies for the last episode. I actually went through COVID, and I forgot to put my notes the summary of the part 1. So this episode will cover the part 1 summary of the book 3, and then we'll get to the chapters 1 and 2 of the part 2. So I guess it'll be a good reminder what happened overall into that part, and then we can jump into the new chapters. Mm-hmm. So I guess in the part 1 Metamorphosis of the Imago book, we are introduced to a new character, Jodas, a child of Lilith, Tino, Dichan, Achajas, and Nikanj, who was supposed to be male. But a long time has passed since the first colonization of Earth with Lilith, and from starting book 1. And the result is that Nikanj got a bit careless, and the result is that Jodas is undergoing metamorphosis to become an Ooloi construct, first of its kind. Which the same thing happened with Akin, right? So
yeah, kind of.
Nikanj is being a bit careless in a lot of aspects. But as the child undergoes the metamorphosis, Nikanj tries to convince everyone that it's perfect and there won't be any problem for the Oankali population, that its latent powers won't cause destruction of the society. And of course, as the child is undergoing the metamorphosis, its senses get stronger and starts to exhibit, and they start to exhibit themselves in the environment by basically unconsciously probing the environment itself. It starts to genetically modify the area it was sleeping on or its own body, making a lot of mess in the process. And the fact that Jodas became an Ooloi was the simple fact that every Ooloi felt the same as Nikanj, lonely because they were not the only ones that didn't have the same-sex children. Just male constructs, female constructs, but no Ooloi constructs. And basically, thanks to that perspective of Jodas being a part human, part Oankali, and being an Ooloi, we learn more about the aspects of being an Ooloi, and especially the organ called Yashi, where the genetic engineering and storing of the genetic material takes place.
And the Oankali organelle as well.
Yeah, and the Oankali organelle, and how they they did those, how they sometimes leave the organelle to wait, thousands if not millions of years to develop another carbon maybe based organism that then will can meet again with the original Oankali and
kind of
create a
not
trade.
Exactly a trade process initially, but like a seeding of a potential future trade partner who already has the equipment, I suppose.
Exactly. And we learn more in this part about the necessity of focus that Jodas needs to exhibit to control its powers, because at any second it could modify a bacteria on its body and that the bacteria could become a deadly pathogen and wipe out the entire civilization. So eventually, the family arrives to consensus that they need to go into an exile to let Jodas learn its own abilities, because the alternative would be going to a mothership to be under constant surveillance of other Oankali, by other Oankali, and especially adult Ooloi. And basically, the group ends up, going on a journey, being ambushed by human resistors who shoot Jodas. But at the end of the days, everything is fine. They rescue another human named Marina, and they catch those who shot the child, and then basically the part ends with the family yet again preparing for another journey into exile.
Yeah, so we get a little bit of a reset.
Basically,
starting again on the attempt to be exiled, I suppose.
Yeah.
Bit of a weird way of doing it. Yeah.
So
it's a good point, actually, that Nikanj also kind of messed up with Akin being male, and the rest of the Oankali consensus seems to be giving Nikanj a fair amount of latitude on this kind of thing.
There's a lack of enforcement, I would say, on Nikanj, because honestly, he made the first human male construct, and it's just like, okay, we don't know anything about that boy, so we'll have to observe him very carefully. And we all know the story from the book 2, and now the same story, but an Ooloi construct is just like, okay, nice.
The Oankali gonna think Nikanj is a bit of a troublemaker.
Honestly, yes.
No, although they did never pay any attention to what it had to say before, right? So
yeah, I think
it's got a bit of a rebellious streak.
It exhibits itself, now, yeah. But yeah, there were so few. We didn't cover that many topics in the last part. To be honest, we had a extensive discussion about the rhesus disease and the blood system evolution, and we talked about the mitochondrial inheritance, because that was all related to the Yashi and the Onkali organelle, right? So that's why we talked about that. But we also talked a bit, like about senses, smell, and sight, and the interesting topic of the owl brain size being so small compared to its eye size. And
yes, yeah, the eyes take up all the space.
Yeah, so we didn't have many topics, but although the rhesus disease and the blood system evolution was quite interesting, and
and a lot of revisiting mitochondrial inheritance that came up also in the special on Gattaca, I think. And we had a lot of occasion to discuss various aspects of sensory enhancement. I think we had a bit more emphasis on smell this time around, right?
Yes, this one was more about smell,
yeah, sort of,
because of all the pheromones that the Onkali release. But yeah, it was an interesting short part, and introduced to a new character, which is quite interesting. I think the Ooloi, from all the perspectives, Ooloi constructs are the most interesting, because as you will see in the summary of the next two chapters, for chapter 1 and 2, Jodas is messing around quite a bit with his body.
Yes, yeah, it's very interesting to have the change in perspective again, right? I think this first part's also kind of introducing us a little bit to those shifts, right? We have this closer perspective on Jodas. We have a more Oankali perspective, a more Ooloi perspective than we have had before. So there's a little bit of introducing that shift from the previous book.
Yeah. So I guess let's go to my chapter 1 prediction. So I wasn't sure what's going to happen, to be fair, because we know Octavia and her time shifts and time passes and stuff like that. So obviously there was no exile onto the ship, because that was my prediction last time. Like, oh, they will be exiled to the ship this time, but now it's again on Earth. But this time, a journey further away from all the resistors, because obviously the village of Pascal, didn't do a great job, like, the people there, we already told, it's predicted that it's gonna be the creme de la creme of all the resistors being left behind, so obviously so now they had to journey further, and I thought maybe obviously there's going to be some changes, obviously, but the question was, is Jodas going to be able to control its powers, right? So that's the always biggest question, like if it's going to be able to prevent creating tumors.
Yeah, as it seems like it's been kind of a bit hit and miss up to this point. Right?
Yeah,
it was pretty good with
Marina,
was it? Yeah, Marina. Yeah, but less so once she was gone.
Yes.
So yeah, it seems to depend a bit on its level of interest in the subject of its modifications.
Yeah. So let's get to chapter 1, because I feel like literally the beginning of the chapter really shows what Jodas being messing around, and what are its subconscious sort of control of the body. So in chapter 1, the group this time did not stop at the island they originally intended to stay on, because it was too close to Pascal. So they journeyed down the river each time, trying to bypass any human territory. And in some cases, the human villages would not even notice that they were there, but in some, they would be followed until they were gone out of their territory. So that's that.
So they're kind of managing to avoid the resistors by just going down the river.
Yeah, basically. And as the time passed and the group was drifting on the river, Jodas started to change its appearance to become more like amphibian-like, having webbed fingers and toes, lost all hair and instead of get more sensory tentacles, and its skin became more gray-green. Like, so it's obvious that the body is changing. He's changing it's changing the subconsciously the body to mimic the environment it is, right?
Yeah, it's very much kind of reshaping itself to reflect whatever is kind of I don't know, useful or interesting to it in the environment.
Yeah. So it's first time when the Lilith probably scolded her children because she scolded Jodas for letting its body to do whatever it wants to. It looked deformed, and she specifically said, "I wish you could see through my eyes. Deformity is as bad as illness." And that made Jodas walk away from Lilith, which it never did before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I think I made the joke of Jodas being the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Literally, yes.
Although perhaps more, I don't know, more asymmetrical. I don't know, some weirdness going on here that's giving Lilith the creeps.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, can you imagine you just like, swimming in the river and suddenly your friend comes out instead of like normal skin color, like having grayish color, webbed fingers, and like no hair suddenly because I'm just river. I get that custom. It's just like, well, really?
That's I don't know, like gillyweed on steroids.
Basically, exactly. Yes, exactly. But yeah, 15 days after beginning of the journey, an archer shot Lilith. Some resistor archers, and Nikanj caught him. And I just love this part. Dragged him unconscious, destroyed all the weapons, changed the color of his skin from brown to for his color of his hair from brown to white, and made his skin age to look like an elderly person. It's just
this is kind of messed up.
Like, honestly, Nikanj, just wow.
Yeah, I think very much a don't F with us kind of an attitude here. It's,
honestly. Like, because Nikanj knows that like the appearance of the humans is very important for them, so he just completely messed up with it. He's like, don't ever get close to us. No one fucks with Nikanj's family, basically.
Yeah. So this guy's gonna wake up thinking he's aged like 30 years.
Basically, yeah. And then so Nikanj then went and healed Lilith, but even though she didn't need help because her body was already modified to survive and fix any damage. Even if it's damage of an arrow hitting a kidney.
Yeah, she's been shot in the kidney with an arrow, which is like not at all an insignificant injury.
Exactly. But mates take care of each other, and he can't refuse to let Lilith heal by herself.
Yeah, there's kind of a casual tone to this whole like Lilith was shot in the kidneys kind of incident, right? But I suppose with her healing abilities and Nikanj nearby, it's not that much of a big deal. But yeah, Jodas from the inside doesn't feel terribly concerned about all this.
Yeah, absolutely. So 21 days after the start of the journey, Dichan suddenly ditched the group and came back with a man, carrying a man whose leg was basically rotting away. It seems that the man broke his leg and lost consciousness because of the necrosis poisoning his body. This time, Nikanj told Jodas to heal the man, to remove the leg and then stimulate growth of a new one. Jodas initially didn't want to do it because it knew it wouldn't be able to let go of the man like it couldn't let go of Marina. Unfortunately, the man was as old as Marina, so it wouldn't be a good mate anyway. Eventually, Ira convinced Jodas, though, that it should try help the man and then share him with her after the healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it was this guy probably fell out of a tree or something.
Yes.
And managed to break his leg. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was kind of thinking about here with how interested Jodas is in basically every human it encounters. I was thinking about kind of mate choosiness in the Ooloi, right? They don't seem, at least at this point, to be very selective about which mates they're interested in, which is a bit of an oddity from kind of a game theoretic perspective on mate choice, because it seems like, especially given that they mate for life, they should be very choosy, very selective about who they have as a mate, as that's a very high investment decision. because they're going to be involved in engineering and creating the offspring with those partners and raising them and so on. Although I suppose part of it might be that they have
the ability to modify the genes, so it's not really that crucial.
There's a higher degree of control over the genetics of the kids from the Ooloi partner.
Yeah.
So maybe that's that downweights it a little bit, but it's kind of another insight into the relative importance of biology and culture in Oankali society, right? They're perhaps less picky on cultural components and more picky on biological components, but it's hard to say. But yeah, it's an interesting little thought that I thought it was worth thinking about that aspect of the Ooloi behavior here. Maybe it's just a component of Ooloi adolescence, as it were, this period between their metamorphoses, where they have this kind of promiscuously explorative phase where they're kind of getting attached to many different potential partners.
That happened with Vakin, no?
Yes,
him traveling around.
Similar kind of thing, I suppose. Yeah. And then maybe they get pickier when they become adults through the second metamorphosis, but I suppose we don't necessarily know yet.
But the thing is, I think Ahjas explains this explains it a bit later on about the Ooloi possessiveness type of thing, and that being so attached to potential mates.
Yeah, there's kind of a competitive element with the adult Ooloi, which is an interesting factor. Yeah.
So Jodas knew that siblings remember their Ooloi siblings because it heard Ahjas and Nikanj talk about theirs, but they have not seen it in decades. And Ooloi belonged to the kin group of its mates, and siblings were not part of it. And that's what happened to it and Air. That's why, the whole sharing, probably they will not speak to each other for a long time once they mate. So, But back to the man. By the time Jodas connected to it, the man was unconscious. He had puncture wounds and deep bruises, and as Richard mentioned earlier, he must have fell from a tree, probably collecting some fruits or from it. The leg was a total loss, so Jodas stopped the circulation and diverted it from the leg, and then made skin to create a barrier between the necrotic tissue and the healthy one. The rotting leg just then detached itself at that point. So Jodas was like, "Okay, can you guys pick it up and take it away?" So when he wakes up, he doesn't see it.
Yeah, it's just imagine the resistors encounter that in the future, though.
Yeah, it'll be crazy. It's
like a random human leg that's kind of detached itself in a way that would, I imagine, that would look weird, right? Because it's not like it's been sliced off.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Then it started activating genes that were dormant since fertilization to stimulate the regrowth of the leg. They would have to camp for a few days before the leg completely grows back again. It was dark by the time Jodas finished. Nikanj was near waiting for it. Nikanj could sense that Jodas did not want it to touch the man. And here's what the book says. "Thorny, possessive Ooloi child," it said, pulling me against it in spite of my stiffness. "I must examine him at this once. But if what you tell me and show me matches what I find in him, I won't touch him again until it's time for him to go, unless something goes wrong." Jodas initially fought back, but then obeyed and went to sit with Ahjas and Nikanj. They fed it, and Ahjas told Jodas about premature Ooloi. Their possessiveness is a bridge to understand humans, but they won't be able to become mates until they become an adult. They can't form a true bond until then, and that's why all other adult Ooloi feel like potential suspects that could steal their mates. It will have to wait. So, yeah. It seems that basically Ooloi, premature Ooloi, are just basically very possessive teenagers.
Yeah, that's an interesting trait. I suppose that could be part of the pressure that produced that kind of tendency to latch on to individuals more quickly, right? If there's competition from the adults, then that kind of makes a bit more sense in this phase.
Yeah. So the chapter ends with Nikanj coming to join them and telling that Jodas did a great job, which is surprising how well it can handle humans, but constructs and Onkali are still problematic for it. But anyway, Tino made crutches for the man and left some clothing for him. Also, Jodas should also put some clothes on for the resistor man. It would be very difficult already for him to accept Jodas as is. Being a amphibian-like being.
Yes. As we say, creature from the Black Lagoon.
Exactly. Honestly.
Yeah, we like the most current of references.
Honestly, I wonder how many people actually will get that reference, because I get it. Honestly, I'm surprised that I get it, but I do.
It's from like 1954.
Yeah, so. Honestly, like the only reason I know is because I've been really into movies by Ray Harryhausen. That's the name I was looking for.
Okay, so is this the special effects guy?
Yes, he's the special effects guy. He was the one who created the special effects of all the skeletons and stuff like that, all those monsters. So okay. I have a book about him because there was in Edinburgh there was a gallery of his work, and it was fantastic. It was beautiful, and it's crazy how detailed those puppets are and dolls. And that's why I know the creature from Black Lagoon, because I looked into other sort of similar special effects creators, and that's why I know. But I don't know if many people really know from 1950 reference from 1950s.
I think I might know it by relay from something like I don't know, Scooby-Doo or something. I think it might have been a reference to
that. Could be, yeah, that's very likely that might be the case as well. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, let's go to the chapter 2 prediction.
Yes. So what did you have predicted for chapter 2?
So obviously, the man awakens beside Jodas, being very surprised awakened by a frog-looking Onkali, and but knowing life, Jodas probably changed its appearance not to scare the man, because we know that it changed the appearance of itself when it was connected to Marina, so it probably changed to mimic what the man prefers to over. But it's definitely not a pleasant awakening, and probably there's gonna be a bit of a "don't fucking touch me" type of thing,
Okay. So I suppose it depends how fast it can pull off a change of appearance, right?
Yes, depending how quickly it can do it. So yeah, in the chapter 2, the man and Jodas awake together, and as everyone can imagine, the man gets startled, so Jodas had to calm him down. It explained to him that his leg was dying, so they removed it, but it will grow back again. Then they introduced themselves. The man's name was João Eduardo Vilas da Silva, a Brazilian Portuguese man. Of course, when the man heard about the new leg, he started panicking. What a surprise!
Unsurprising. Yeah.
Again, Jodas had to explain that it will take a few days for it to start looking like a normal leg. João then asked who are they, and Jodas explained. He asked if Jodas is a woman or a man, but Jodas told him neither. But to our surprise, Jodas changed its body to become more like female. And here's a bit of from the book. I'm not an adult yet, no? You appear to be an adult. You appear to be a young woman, too thin perhaps, but very lovely.
Yep. So already changing to try and reflect the preferences of this guy.
It's like teenagers, early 2000s, like becoming emo is like, no, mom, it's not a face, mom. But it's basically Jodas doing the same thing, just changing its appearance however it feels like. Yeah.
I suppose it has more flexibility of bodily self-expression.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't a surprise for Jodas, though. Body wanted him to please him. So it started changing to match the man's preferences. But Jodas explained to João that it's neither man nor woman, but an Ooloi, because only Ooloi have the power to regenerate body parts. The moment Jodas mentioned that it was an Ooloi, João immediately changed his attitude. It was as though the air between us became a crystalline wall, transparent but very hard. I could not reach him through it anymore. He had taken refuge behind it, and even if I touched him, I would not reach him. The man hid basically behind an ice-cold shield, a rejection, or rather revulsion. Jodas asked him, why does the man hate Jodas when it saved his life? That's when the man told it, you take men as though they were women. that the Onkali in their human whores cause all the trouble, treat all mankind as their woman.
Yeah, so we've got fairly sexist attitudes from Zhao.
Honestly, that attitude would not get you far.
No.
But hey.
We kind of get that premise rejected, sort of, by Jordas, although he's more kind of rejecting the framing that its parents are not like willing participants in this activity, but not really commenting specifically on Zhao's characterization of the relationship between men and women as he sees it. But
yeah, so that's the thing. Like, in a way, I sort of get this attitude, like, because I mean, obviously, look at America at the moment. I mean, how objectified women are at the moment, the whole situation. So, but we've discussed this before. This whole, it's a trade, but the Onkali really only get anything out of it, not the humans, and then only because of Akin we get the a human Agjai, as they call it, the separate human population on Mars, right? So
yep. We have a more pro-Oankali perspective, I suppose you might say, from Jordas than we have had potentially previously, because so some of the stuff that as a human perspective might see from a different lens, see through a different lens, or frame differently as a problem. We're getting a fairly Oankali favoring tint on the lenses through which we're looking at things.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jordas, on the other hand, clearly stated to him that it knows that's not what the man feels. Jordas' human parents are here, and it won't heal him further if he will insult them anymore. And the chapter ends with Jordas telling Joao that he's free to go. He's not a prisoner, but his leg development needs to be monitored for the next few days. Otherwise, it can develop in some sort of a cancer. And then even if it's cut, it will still regrow and destroy his life. Jordas then told him about the crutches and clean clothing. And after some time, brought some food to let the man eat. But Joao didn't accept it from it. When Jordas went away to wash itself and came back, it saw Aero push the ball of porridge towards the man, and he took it. And when Aero touched him, he didn't flinch. That's where the chapter ends.
Okay, yep. So we have Joao being more comfortable with an actually female Oankali.
Yes.
One that doesn't merely appear as such, but is actually an Ooloi.
So yeah, I smell a bit of jellishness being in the air.
Yeah, I suppose potentially. Yeah, I suppose Aor could potentially be interested in this guy as a human mate, although would need an Ooloi to add to the mix.
Yeah, I wonder.
Also, they're all still quite young. Well, these two Oankali are
quite young, and the thing is, as like mentioned, Joao is actually quite old, at the same age of Marina, so maybe too old for them to make a family unit as such. I guess let's go to my chapter 3 prediction.
Sure, yeah. What do you think's up next?
So we all determined that the humans that were left would show more hatred towards the Oankali and their human families, which we saw just now again. And as mentioned, earlier, like maybe the man maybe Air and the man chooses Air over Jordas, which would probably make Jordas very jealous because obviously of how possessive the premature Ooloi are. But I'm not sure if it's going to develop to anything, right? Because it feels to me that I don't know, knowing like that Jordas listens to Nikanj be like, sorry, but he's too old. Just, let the man go. And knowing the man will probably go because the whole hatred towards Oankali is real. And we know that what's left behind is quite, there are a group of people that basically hate Oankali with probably passion of the 1,000 Suns. So, nothing's going to come out of that.
I suppose, okay, interesting. I suppose also Jordas has some more tricks to play than Eeyore necessarily, right? Jordas can make itself more female, or use all of its pheromone finagling to.
I mean, to be fair, that's
affect.
the most scary part of it, right? Because it can literally change the appearance to match what your preference is, and you can literally and then release pheromones that basically make you not being able to resist, right? So it
can match your preferences and also mess with your preferences.
Yes. So it's pretty crazy, right? So that's the thing. Like,
so it's typically it's probably going to leave our friend Zhao with much more conflicted feelings about the Oankali. And as is typical when the humans interact with the Oankali.
So that's interesting, because Jodas earlier was thinking about, like, there was a paragraph in the book that I didn't mention, but it said, like, oh, it can match its body to the preference of one of the partners, right? But what if there's two partners with different preferences? What's going to happen to its body?
Just gonna yo-yo back and forth.
Basically, the yo-yo become like, very like in between type of thing. Imagine like, I don't know. It's going to be, it's a weird thing, right? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, the next few chapters of what's going to happen to Jodas, and whether, and also I think Ayer is actually close to metamorphosis, I think. Because there was a mention of like the hair, like slowly, still being a sexless child, but its metamorphosis can begin quite soon. I think eventually.
Yes, yeah. I think it's still Eka Oan, but we could easily see that. So that might be a point of tension. The metamorphoses have often been at inconvenient times.
Exactly. And as we know, Octavia loves inconvenient timing, metamorphosis and stuff like that. So but yeah.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
I guess that's it for today, no?
I think so, yeah. That wraps it up.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We are Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on xenothesis.com. I was Michael Klinka.
And I was Richard Acton.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.